Hey all, so this is War 9. We are up against CIRR. Don't believe we fought them before, but we're up against this Warlock first. Rich get richer Fury is the important part. Against Warlock, you often want to have a lot of unique buffs, even more so this time. Odin is very, very good at that. He hits nice and hard. Doesn't look like that right now, but that's why we're going to go for the special one, get that true strike up, and now we're ignoring the armor. Now, these Furies are supposed to be 15%. That heavy does make me think, like, okay, sure, that is what's going on. And maybe it's just because we lost the true strike so quickly thanks to unstoppable armor. But that special one, I guess 12,000 at the end. I don't know. We have so many Furies. I was just honestly expecting to do a bit more damage than we did here, because Odin always hits hard. I guess 21 hits is fine for a war fight. But obviously he's a great counter. Turns off infection, turns off all of that. The node works for you, not against you, regardless of how much it benefits you. Good to go. So then we throw on all three Odin prefights and use Doom against this Aarkus. Doom is, of course, armor break immune, has a lot of abilities that counter Aarkus. And even though Aarkus is going to stack a bunch of power gain buffs, the node says that the Furies go to whoever has the most unique buffs. So because we're getting 3 unique ones from Odin, and Aarkus will only ever get 2 or 3 when he goes above 2 bars of power, we should be totally fine. So see, we're gaining the Furies here, and right here, I should have been throwing more staggers. It would have given us more power, it would have kept him under control, but I really did not think it was going to be a problem, because we're going to have more unique buffs the entire time. And then he starts gaining Furies, despite the fact that we definitely still have more unique buffs. So that was unpleasant. Not the way I would have chosen to learn that this node was bugged, but I'm glad I was using Doom to do it, because he can just block Aarkus even with like 15 Furies. Anyway, now we have the staggers up, entirely too late. If I end up taking this again, it'll be totally fine. I'm just going to be throwing a lot more heavies to prevent that from happening. We should be able to keep the Furies on ourselves. Kind of hilarious, he just sits at 1% there, but obviously a single hit into the passive stun afterwards solves it. So, lesson learned. Hope that gets fixed by next season, because if you put in the work to make the node work for you, it would be nice if it did so. Anyway, moving on to this Iron Man Infinity War. I don't think I've seen this here before, honestly, but it's power snack. Reed is good for that in general. Reed is very good for that with Defiance. I've soloed the Iron Man Infinity War in Abyss with Reed, so I'm very comfortable with his movements. I know how to do the heavy counters. Not really worried about this. He's not even unstoppable armor, so we don't have to worry about that. We basically just need to re-parry him when that works. When it doesn't, wait for the heavy and counter it. I have no idea what I did there. I think my brain just completely short-circuited and I saw the parry and I was like, cool, we stunned him. Anyway, now on to the very easy game plan for the rest of the fight. Good news is this is my only Reed fight, so if losing 8% extra at the start should not be the end of the world. Having no problem keeping these up. The other good thing for us is that whoever placed this Iron Man is running willpower. And so that is a whole bunch of damage that we get from reversing it. And that's going to make this fight much, much faster. Because Reed does ramp to very solid damage levels as he gets going. But the passive armor ups on Iron Man are going to provide some crit resistance. And then when you combine that with Outlast and the armor itself, our actual hits are not going to do a ton of damage. This is definitely not going to be one of the faster Reed fights. But reversing willpower between the 3 Petrifies and Despair really helps. And of course, we're reversing it further whenever we do stun him, but mostly just going for heavies. That was a pretty nice crit there when there wasn't anything up. Now we know we need to stick to heavies because he's below 18% and he can parry anything if he's not stunned or if it's not a heavy. That's fine. We're not going to throw a special 1. We're not going to make it to a special 3. There. Only gained one persistent charge in that because we went in with 3 debuffs, came out with 4, but very, very simple fight. Healed up Doom, taking him into the champion. Same basic idea. Whoever has more buffs gets a benefit, but here it's power gain as opposed to the Furies. When the champion has buffs, he's going to reduce our ability accuracy. So we do need to watch for that. But also when we parry, we get this armor up. So having thoroughly learned my lesson, I am throwing all kinds of heavies here. Whatever comes, we're gonna nullify it. We'll wait out the unstoppables. Don't care. Gonna be landing all of the staggers. Because that's also worth pointing out. These nodes all have Mystic Ward on them. So Doom's nullify, his special 1, the contact hits while he has the aura up, not very likely to land. But staggers, while they do nullify buffs, are not technically a nullify the same way that cleanses are not purifies, even though they purify. The language is weird, but once you know the rule, it does make sense. And so staggers get around Mystic Ward. And so the best way for us to control buffs on any of these nodes is to just land a whole lot of those heavies. And then we throw the special 2 and it's over because Doom has entirely too much base attack for how good his kit is. We move on to Cosmic Ghost Rider. Same idea. As I've mentioned before with CGR, with this global, we are going to spend the first 10 seconds of the fight dancing, not really doing anything. We can hit into his block, we can parry him, we are just not going to land an actual hit. Because when that happens, or sorry, if that had happened, he would have procced an armor, he could have gone unstoppable, we possibly would have gotten smacked if we weren't fast enough to block. But if you wait for the global to put the armor on him, that triggers the judgment, and then hitting him doesn't proc any more armors. So that part is easy. We wait for unstoppable armor to come back around, because if that sends him unstoppable, it makes him immune to the passive stun from our special 3, as well as any other stuns. That is just how stun immunity works. And so we don't want that to interrupt our Doom cycle. We're not going to worry about pushing him above 2 bars of power. That's generally what I try to avoid doing with Cosmic Ghost Rider when I can. But yeah, we just do that to get the 1 heavy up, allow Rich get richer and Mystic Dispersion from him throwing the special 1 to get us to a second special 3, and Doom with 2 Furies ends most fights very, very quickly. So that didn't completely finish him off, but 3 hits afterwards did. And honestly, if I had just thrown the Odin prefights on Doom for the Warlock fight, he could have handled that as well. There would have been small windows where infection came up for like 2 seconds, but Doom with Odin prefights is just completely overpowered for this lane. I know Nerd's been doing a fair amount of this season. So I am leaving this loading screen in so that you understand just how terrified I was going into this boss fight that I was about to get a disconnect. I was sure it was going to happen. I actually picked up my phone and typed into our line chat, "Oh God, please don't disconnect." And nope, still not yet. Somewhere in here, I tap on the screen out of desperation, and okay, the fight loads. All right. But notice that it's starting at a 5-minute timer, not 5:30. So I actually didn't notice that in the moment. That's fun. Anyway, I'm pretty good with Sersi's evades. It's probably partially that I've played with her a fair amount. I find that always helps me with evades. When you have that feeling of, when I'm playing the champion, this is where the hits are, it makes it much easier to dex them. Probably why I'm so bad at the Korg special 1 decks, because I never play Korg. Anyway, that part I don't worry about too much with Sersi's kit. Really what we're looking for here is trying to make sure the staggers are up, because glancing is annoying and will stop the nullify from Doom's Special 1, but the stagger just gets rid of it as it starts, lets there be no problems. Now, if we let Sersi ramp up, then even the incinerates from the Special 2 wouldn't be fantastic, because her transmutation buffs actually shorten the duration of incinerates. But we're just nullifying everything as she triggers it. We're not letting her combo us, which would be the other way she would get them. And so we're doing plenty of damage to her. Doom is not my favorite Sersi matchup, and there are some nodes where he's actively a bad idea, but as long as you're staying on top of the glancing, it's really not a problem. I'm going to go ahead and throw this here. It is going to cause the glancing, but that's going to get staggered immediately, get the incinerates up, and yeah, there she goes. Alright, so let's talk about this next fight coming up. It's going to be Peni on node 55, the Brute Force Limber Hard Knock Life Miniboss. This has been a very popular placement this season for excellent reason. The Hard Knock Life means that you can't just throw the House of X pre-fight on and use any number of counters to get through her. Brute Force makes it very difficult to cut through her shield quickly without taking a bunch of damage. Limber means that if you're not using the House of X pre-fight, or if you're using a non-metal villain, even when you do stun and accept the hit from Hard Knock Life, your stuns are eventually going to run out of duration, and then you can't rely on them. There's a lot of things that can go wrong here, because Peni makes it difficult to hit her. And so if you don't break her stun, or if you don't break her shield quickly, you're going to die to the Brute Force. And if you're not using a Cosmic, it's going to be even worse. Because remember, Brute Force degen strength is affected by class advantage. Now, so far this season, we have always had access to either Corvus or Hercules. And even without that, I wasn't really worried, because for a long time, Peni was bugged, so that if you threw heavies, she wouldn't resist them the way she's supposed to in her kit. But she was recently fixed in the update, and this war had both Corvus and Hercules banned. So we had a few options. We could send one of the Cosmics that are Power Burn immune, Terrax, Venom, Venompool, King Groot. But the problem is that all of those are some flavor of ramp champion, and the fact that they're Power Burn immune isn't going to save them from the fact that they do need time to break her shield. And so we came down to two options. We had Odin, we had Kingpin. Our Kingpin was our go-to option for the hazard shift boss that they placed, Annihilus. And so we sent him there, and I figured Odin was going to be fine for Peni. And notice right here, he takes down her shield, even at the start of the fight, in 2 blocked combos. That is pretty darn efficient. But right there I make a mistake, and that's because I had dueled for this several times, and every time I had done so, I had felt very comfortable using the heavy counter. But Odin has one of those heavies where sometimes he seems to leap forward, and sometimes he just kind of stands in place and gestures at the opponent. Which one happens depends on where the opponent is in their combo when they throw the heavy, and apparently in the duels I had done, Peni had not thrown her heavy in exactly that spot. And so the spacing was off, I didn't catch it in time, and I took a lot of damage. That's a real problem. So I did power start so that I would get to the special 3 faster, because getting that big Fury makes us break through her shield even faster. You'll notice how when her shield came back, we got through it in 4 or 5 hits. It's about as good as that could possibly be, but now I'm taking Brute Force, because she is refusing to throw this special 2. Thankfully, she finally does, and notice how little it does even with a disorient on us. That part is really nice. Odin's massive armor value means that we effectively don't feel the block penetration part of Disorient, or sorry, the reduced block proficiency, I should say. But we really are feeling the brute force, and having to bait that special 2 hurt. We are losing the HP race here, and now her shield is back. So we want her to block so that we can hit in and break the shield. She doesn't block. She throws a heavy, then she throws a special 2, then she dashes in. Now we finally get to break the shield, but we're taking brute force. We hit in, the shield's down, but she turtles, and we lose it out. So obviously we had the shield down. She has 10% left. If I hadn't thrown that heavy I didn't need to throw at the beginning of the fight and gotten comboed, if I had had that 30% of health back, easily would have finished this fight. So Odin can do it. But this is a much harder fight than it used to be, now that you cannot heavy counter specials. Because if I had been able to heavy counter her specials, I know the spacing for both the special 1 and the special 2, and I would have taken like a fraction of that brute force. But now that she's fixed, she is a real problem there. We saw the same placement in another battle group, and they did send their rank 4 Kingpin, so we kind of got an A-B test. He did solo. It was not particularly pretty, and no shade to the player. Rob played it very well. It's just a hard fight now if you don't have access to a charged Corvus or to Hercules. But his Kingpin is a rank 4. And the same way that if I had had a rank 4 Odin, that fight would have been simple. We need to send our rank 4 Kingpin next time. If we do start seeing rank 4 Pennies there with those 2 banned, I still think Kingpin can do it. I think a rank 4 Odin could do it as well. A rank 3 might be able to if I just boost to the moon. We'll see what happens when we get there, but I think next time the clear answer is to just send our Kingpin because we have that model, now that Rob has done it in BG2, even after the change to how she works. Because we actually had a video reference of Kingpin taking her there, but it was before the change, and the guy kept throwing heavies after her specials, and every time he did I was like, well, that's not safe anymore. But now that Rob has done it, we can send Plant our rank 4 Kingpin in BG3, trust him to do that, and just come up with an alternative for Annihilus. That'll be fine. Unfortunately, that means that I now have my first death of the season. I was really hoping I would pick up another deathless one. Last season was rough. I learned a few things the hard way with Tigra and with Unstoppable Armor. I thought I'd be able to pick it back up. This time was going pretty well, but Peni's rough. I know I have a video on how to fight her, which I will link in the description, because if any of the things I was talking about with why I was going with certain options over others weren't making sense to you, I do go over it in that video. And that's also why Kingpin is such a good one, also covered in that vid. But she's just difficult. I said when she first came out, I feel like she counters just slightly too many of the ways that you would want to come after her when you start factoring in things like war nodes. And I think we lost sight of that for a while because she's been bugged, I think, for pretty much the entire time that bans have been out. And I think we're going to really start seeing that again. Anyway, there are answers to her. I wouldn't have died if I had just avoided the one mistake. It's kind of a bummer that she is one of the few nodes on the map where you really can't afford that. Anyway, I'll stop belaboring the point. Lesson learned. Hopefully I can keep this season to 1 death. We did win the war, and pretty handily, so that definitely helps me feel better that I didn't cost the Alliance. We're still doing okay. We actually moved back into Masters with this victory, so hopefully we can get a few more wins and stay there, even after our rough start. Hope y'all will join us for the rest of the journey. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and take care.